You wake before the sun breaks over the ridgeline, stirred not by any voice, but by habit, by the rhythm of life passed down through generations. The air is cold, close, and thick with the scent of earth, smoke, and wool. You pull the heavy blanket tighter around your shoulders. A coarse, hand-woven covering of undyed sheep's wool, edged in tablet, woven trim, that your sister spent long evenings finishing last winter. You lie still for a moment on the raised wooden platform that serves as your bed. There is no mattress, only straw beneath a fur, and you can feel the familiar ache of your back from the hard surface. But you're used to it. Your family shares this space, all of you in the same large room. On one side, your younger brother mutters in his sleep, one arm tucked under his head. Your mother breathes steadily near the wall, wrapped in a reindeer hide. Your father is already gone. His spot is cold. He may have risen earlier to check the traps or to speak with the gods, though he'll never say so aloud. The longhouse is dark save for the soft red glow of the dying fire, coals nestled deep under last night's ashes in the central hearth. It runs the length of the hall, flanked by stones to keep it contained. The smoke from the fire lingers, hanging low beneath the high soot-blackened roof. There's a small hole near the ridge of the roofline to let the smoke escape, but much of it curls and weaves around the beams before it finds its way out. Your eyes sting faintly from the lingering smoke, but it's a smell and sensation that's as much a part of your home as the wooden beams themselves. The longhouse is built with thick timber walls, stacked and sealed with moss and clay. Outside, it is covered in turf in places, blending with the landscape, almost as if the earth itself had grown up around it. You can hear the gentle creak of the wind pressing against the thatched roof. The sea must be calm. No rain today, and that's good. Rain makes everything heavier, colder, more difficult. You swing your legs down and pull on your woolen tunic, stiff from wear, and a second layer over it. The cloth itches slightly against your skin, but it's warm. You slip your feet into leather shoes, softened from repeated use, and lace them tight with strips of hide. The cold is sharp when you open the door flap and step out into the grey morning. The ground crunches faintly beneath your feet. Frost clings to the grasses and low brush. It's late in the season now, and winter is never far away. Your breath steams in the air, and you pull your cloak tighter, fastening it with a bone pin at the shoulder. The cloak, too, is wool, dyed a faded blue from woad. Color is precious here. Most things are the brown of soil or the gray of smoke. But a bit of blue or red speaks of care and kinship, and you remember when this one was new. The world is quiet. The fjord lies still in the distance, its waters reflecting the early light like a mirror flanked by steep cliffs. The hills beyond are tinged with white. You listen. The soft bleat of sheep from the pen, the distant bark of a dog, the rustle of birds waking in the trees. This is the land of your ancestors. It feels old, older than memory, and even though you are young, you carry that weight with you. You walk the familiar path to the byre, the animal shelter built onto the end of the longhouse. It shares its warmth through the wall, and in return, the animals share their smell. The door groans as you open it, and the scent of manure, straw, and animal breath surrounds you. It is not unpleasant. It is the scent of life. Inside, your family's animals stir. The sheep lift their heads, white-eyed in the gloom. A cow lows softly. There is one goat, ornery and clever, who eyes you as you move toward the feed. You carry a bucket of grain and some dried hay, carefully stored in the loft above. There isn't much left. Winter stores must last. You speak softly to them as you feed. Words don't matter, just the sound of your voice. It keeps them calm. You notice the frost on their backs, the ice on their water trough. You chip at it with a stick, Then fetch a small bucket of fresh water from the nearby stream. The water is painfully cold, so cold it makes your teeth ache when you sip from the bucket after the animals are done. But it's clean, clear as glass, and you are grateful. Returning to the house, you pass the woodpile. You stack a few more logs under the eaves to dry and bring some in with you. Firewood is precious, each log felled, chopped, and carried by hand. Nothing is wasted. Even the smallest twig is saved for kindling. Inside, the fire is being coaxed back to life. Your mother is up now, crouching at the hearth with a flint and steel, blowing gently at the curls of smoke as she adds bark and twigs. The warmth spreads slowly, crawling across the stones like a living thing. Someone stirs the ashes, uncovering the buried coals. It is an art. Too fast, and the smoke will choke. Too slow, and the fire will die. She does it without thought, just as her mother taught her. You sit by the fire, rubbing your hands together, watching the light brighten the dark corners of the longhouse. Soon, the day will be full. You will mend nets, or walk to the traps, or help split wood. You may follow your father to the shore, or climb the hills to look for game. The work will be hard, but it will be good. It is always good if it feeds the hearth and keeps the family safe. The rest of the house begins to stir. A child whimpers in sleep. Someone coughs, deep and wet. Your aunt rolls over with a groan, joints stiff from the cold. The smell of grain heating in the pot fills the room. You hear the soft clatter of the quernstone already in motion. Someone is grinding more barley for the day's meals. You stretch and close your eyes for a moment longer, letting the fire warm your face. Outside, the sky has begun to pale, blue and pink at the edges, clouds stretched thin like pulled wool. The frost will melt soon, but not yet. For now, the world is still silver. And so your day begins not with urgency, but with rhythm, with breath and frost and the quiet patience of those who came before you. The sun is still low. The gods still sleep, or perhaps they watch from the hilltops. But you are here, awake, alive in the cold morning of the north. This is your time, your land, your people. And though the day will be long, you are ready. You return from the cold with the scent of damp earth and hay still clinging to your skin. The longhouse greets you with its familiar warmth, not the searing heat of a bonfire, but the steady, slow kind that seeps from stone and ember. The fire is rising now, flickering and crackling as your mother stokes it with care. The flames dance up around split logs, casting orange light over the faces of those beginning to wake. The central hearth is the heart of your home. It runs along the spine of the building, open and shallow, with stones laid to frame its shape. It has burned nearly every day of your life, and will burn long after you are grown. Here, food is cooked, warmth is made, and stories are told. Ashes drift across the floor, swept daily, yes, but never fully removed. The ashes become part of the floor, packed down with dirt, straw, and years of footsteps. Around the hearth, the longhouse slowly comes to life. The space is shared by your whole extended family, grandparents, parents, siblings, cousins, and a few thralls who sleep nearer to the door. No walls divide you. Privacy is unknown, but the closeness is not a burden. It is warmth in the dead of winter, comfort in storm and silence. Even in sleep, you are never alone. The roof is high and steep, built with strong beams and covered in layers of thatch and turf. Smoke weaves through it, never fully escaping, so everything inside bears its mark. Your cloak, your hair, your blankets, they all smell faintly of fire and ash. But it's a comforting smell, the smell of life preserved against the cold. As the room warms, your mother begins the morning's task, grinding grain into meal. She crouches beside the quernstone, a pair of heavy discs, one atop the other. With practiced motion, she turns the top stone with a wooden handle, pouring in dried barley a little at a time. The sound is soft, gritty, and endless. Grinding is hard work, but it is part of every day. The meal she makes will feed you all. First as porridge this morning, and later in loaves of dense barley bread, baked on hot stones near the fire. Nearby, your sister helps by fetching water from the clay jar kept close to the hearth. It's been drawn from the stream earlier and warmed slightly by proximity to the fire. Clean water is precious. It is used carefully, poured, not splashed. Your sister pours some into a clay pot already filled with the ground barley and goat's milk, then stirs it gently with a wooden spoon. The scent that rises is warm and thick, earthy, and familiar. You watch from your place on a wooden bench, hands warming near the flame. Your bench is also your bed at night, a long, flat surface raised off the floor, with chests built beneath for storing tools, clothing, and whatever valuables you have. Few items are truly yours, of course. Most belong to the family or are passed down between generations. But you have a comb carved from bone that your uncle gave you, and a small pouch that once belonged to your grandfather. These you keep carefully hidden under your sleeping furs. All around you, the house hums with quiet activity. One of your younger cousins is helping to pick lice from her brother's hair, crushing the insects between her nails and wiping them on a cloth. A thrall feeds kindling to the fire and stirs the cooking pot as instructed. Your grandmother sits on a stool near the doorway, mending a tear in a linen undertunic with swift, practiced fingers. She hums a tune without words, an old song, older than memory. The rhythm of life here is not rushed. There is always something to do, but it is done with patience. The longhouse itself is long and narrow, built of rough-hewn timber, its sides banked with earth and stones. There are few windows, only small openings covered with animal hide that let in a little light and a great deal of cold. The main door, wide and stout, is carved with simple protective runes. It is thick enough to keep out the wind and lined with straw to block the draught. In summer, it stays open during the day. But now, as the cold deepens, it is opened only briefly and sealed again with care. The walls are decorated in simple ways. Animal hides hang for insulation and beauty, some dyed with natural colors in swirling patterns. Wooden pegs hold tools, belts, cloaks. Near the head of the hall, the high seat stands, the place of honor reserved for the head of the household. It is carved with knotwork designs and draped with the finest fur you own, even though it's worn at the edges. Your father sits there in the evenings, listening, watching, speaking little unless it is needed. On a small shelf near the high seat, symbols of the gods are placed with quiet reverence. A carved figure of Thor, red with ochre, watches over the hearth. A small iron hammer hangs from a cord above him. Offerings of dried herbs and animal bones rest at his feet. You do not pray loudly here. Instead, respect is shown through daily work, through order, and through the care of fire and kin. Your breakfast is ready. A bowl is handed to you, wooden, carved smooth with time, and slightly charred on one side from a long-forgotten spill. Inside is warm porridge, thickened with milk and a pinch of salt. If there is any honey left from summer's collection, a drop is added. It is precious, saved for special moments. Today, there is none, but the porridge is still welcome. It fills your belly, warming you from the inside out. You eat sitting cross-legged on the bench, your fingers wrapped around the bowl. The others eat too, quietly, some speaking in low voices about the day ahead, repairing the roof, checking the smokehouse, mending gear for the coming journey inland. The fire crackles. The smell of porridge, wool and smoke wraps around you like a blanket. You glance at the fire and think of the stories you've been told. How the gods gave fire to humankind, how Loki stole it from a mountain spirit, how it burns in both men's homes and their hearts. It is sacred, this fire, not worshipped but respected. It keeps you alive in a land that often seems like it would rather see you dead. As you finish your meal and set your bowl beside the hearth, you feel the pull of the day ahead. There are nets to mend, wood to split, perhaps an errand to run to the neighboring farmstead. You rise and stretch, bones cracking slightly from the cold. The house hums behind you, still busy, still grounded in its ancient rhythm. You take one last look at the hearth as you pull on your cloak. It's burning well now, steady and strong, the heart of your home. You nod to it, not quite a bow, but something like it. Then you step outside again into the pale light of morning, ready to do your part. The morning sun has begun to rise over the hills, faint and low, casting long shadows across the clearing around your home. The light filters through bare branches, glinting off frost-laced grass, painting the world in pale gold. Your breath still clouds before you in little puffs, but your hands are warming now as you carry the tool bundle over your shoulder, a simple wrapped cloth of heavy linen, tied at the corners to keep your father's tools safe and dry. Today your task is in the woods. Timber is always needed. In your world, trees are more than trees. They are shelter, ship, warmth, weapon. They are the ribs of your longhouse, the spine of your boat, the handle of your axe. Even the gods, you were told, shaped the first man and woman from tree trunks, Ask and Embla, formed from driftwood on the shore. So you do not treat the trees lightly. Your father is already ahead on the path. He walks with the long-legged ease of one who has spent a lifetime moving through the forest, and he turns now to wait for you, his hand resting on the long shaft of his axe. It is not a weapon, not this one. It is the carpenter's axe, heavy-headed and wide-bladed, perfect for shaping timber. He made it himself years ago, with an iron head and an ashwood haft, fitted tight and wrapped with leather near the grip. It is beautiful, in the quiet way that things made by hand can be. You reach him near the edge of the stand of pine and birch that borders your farmstead. The trees here are old but not too large, thin enough for one man to manage, thick enough for planks, poles, rafters. Together, you pace the grove, looking for the right tree. It should be straight, strong, unwarped. You run your hands over the bark, feel the chill beneath your fingers. Your father nods at one, then marks it with a notch of his axe. He doesn't speak much when you're working. He doesn't need to. Felling a tree is careful work. You begin by scoring the base with angled cuts, forming a wedge. The axe bites deep with each swing, the sound echoing through the forest. Chock, chock, chock. A rhythm builds. Swing, breathe, swing again. Chips fly, sap bleeds from the wound. The tree shudders slightly under each blow. You take turns. Your hands begin to sting from the cold and effort, but you press on, switching your grip when needed, adjusting your stance. You've done this before, though not often, and your father watches with a quiet eye, correcting only when necessary. He lets you work. That is his way of teaching. Eventually the final cut gives. The tree groans, a deep sound from its heart, and begins to lean. You step back quickly, listening for the snap of splintering fibers. Then, with a crash, it falls, limbs scraping through the others as it descends. The ground shakes slightly under your feet. The birds fall silent for a moment. You stare at it, panting lightly, cheeks flushed from cold and effort. There's pride in you, quiet and warm. Now comes the trimming. The smaller branches are lopped away first. Quick work with a sharp hatchet. Then the trunk is stripped, bark peeled back with long, deliberate strokes of a draw knife. If the wood is for building, it must be shaped before it dries. If for fire, it will be stacked and seasoned, months or even years before it is burned. You'll likely use it for both. You carry what you can back to the clearing, armfuls of trimmed branches, lengths of green wood strapped between you. For larger pieces, your father builds a sledge of sorts, a flat drag pulled behind by ropes. You help lash it together, wedge the timber on top, then each of you takes an end of the rope and begins the long, steady haul back home. The sled leaves twin tracks in the earth, lines that mark effort and purpose. Back at the longhouse, the wood is sorted. Some is set near the workshop for shaping into boards or pegs. Some is stacked under the eaves, where the smoke from the chimney keeps it dry. The smallest pieces go near the hearth, firewood for tonight or tomorrow. You will split them later with the iron wedge and mallet. That task is yours. You take a moment to rest, leaning against the woodpile, hands aching pleasantly. Your mother steps outside with a cloth-wrapped piece of flatbread and a bit of dried fish. You eat slowly, chewing with intention, watching the light move across the sky. The sun never climbs high in winter. It stays low, like it's tired too. When you return to the work, your tools are already waiting. The hand axe now sharpened, the wooden mallet still slightly cracked from the last season's splitting. Each has its place, its history. You've been told never to leave them lying on the ground. Tools are not just things, they are partners. They are part of the work, and they deserve care. You begin to split the wood for kindling. It's a steady rhythm. Place the wedge, strike with the mallet, listen for the crack. The logs yield in halves, then quarters. You stack them neatly, edge to edge, building a small wall of warmth. The scent of fresh wood fills the air, sharp, sweet, and living. Even after felling, a tree breathes a little longer. As you work, your thoughts drift to the things wood will become. You imagine the board that might line the prow of a boat, carved with the curling forms of dragons and serpents. You picture the beams that will hold up a new shelter, shaped by adze and axe into something that will withstand both wind and time. Or perhaps this wood will make spoons, bowls, or even a new loom beam. Something everyday, but essential. All of it begins here. When your chores are done and the timber is stacked and sorted, you wash your hands in the cold stream, shaking off the dirt and splinters. The light is beginning to fade again. Short days are the way of winter, and your muscles hum with the weight of honest work. You head back inside, boots muddy, hair flecked with bark. The fire is still burning, and the longhouse glows with its warmth. Your father joins you, and though he says little, his nod is enough. You have done well. As you settle by the hearth and stretch your tired legs, someone begins to hum. Another begins carving. Someone else mends a strap. Around you, the fruits of timber are already in use. The handles of tools, the stools you sit on, the wall beams that shelter you from wind and snow. This is a world made by hands, and today yours were part of it. The day grows older, the pale sun now resting low in the southern sky. There is no warmth in it, not in these months. Yet it guides your movements still, a slow-burning lamp that tells you how much time remains before the long hush of evening. You step outside once more, your hands raw but no longer cold, your legs stiff from labor but still willing. Out beyond the longhouse, the land spreads in gentle folds. Fields lie waiting, flat and brown beneath a brittle crust of frost. These are not the neat rectangles of distant kingdoms. Your family's land follows the shape of the earth, cleared with effort over generations, wrested from forest and rock. The soil is stubborn, often damp, filled with stone, but it can be made to yield. It must be. You are not in the planting season, not now. That comes with spring, when the soil softens, the ice retreats, and the birds return in noisy flocks. Then you will scatter barley and rye, peas and beans, trusting them to take root. Now, in winter, the fields sleep, but they are not forgotten. You walk the boundary with your cousin, both of you with long sticks in hand, prodding at the fence lines, checking for damage. The fences are low, made of woven branches and stakes, and they bend easily under snow or the pressure of an eager goat. You tighten one where it sags, weaving new branches into the old, your fingers quick despite the cold. There is talk of next year's planting as you work. What grew well, what failed, which field needs rest. The land cannot be worked without pause. It must be allowed to breathe, to mend itself, or it will turn against you. You rotate your crops carefully. One field is left fallow. Another grows only hay, meant for the animals who give you milk, wool, and warmth. After the fence is secured, you walk to the edge of the pasture, where the livestock huddle in their shelter, sheep mostly, and a few goats. They eye you warily as you approach, their breath rising in soft clouds. You check their hay and their water, breaking the ice on the trough with a rock. The animals are thin this time of year, but not starving. You count them by habit, whispering their names. Many are named, after all, and then leave them to their quiet chewing. Then you turn your steps toward the forge. The forge is small, barely more than a lean-to built from thick timber and roofed with sod. But within it, something ancient and powerful sleeps. The smith, a distant cousin of your mother's, has already lit the charcoal fire. You smell it before you see it, rich, dark and sharp, different from the hearth fire you know so well. This is the smell of change, of iron softened and shaped by flame and force. You enter, ducking low, and feel the wave of heat hit your face. The forge is alive now, glowing with promise. In its heart, the bellows wheeze as your cousin works them with his foot, sending air hissing into the coals. The iron glows dull red, then brightens a breath from yellow. He nods to you without speaking, his face streaked with soot. You are here to learn, not to forge weapons, not yet, but tools, nails, rivets, maybe the hinge for a new door or a buckle for a packstrap. These small things hold your world together. You take your place and begin with the tongs, reaching into the coals to lift a piece of softened iron onto the anvil. Your cousin guides your hand, then lets go. The hammer rests beside you, worn smooth from years of use. You strike. The sound is like thunder in a small cave. Sharp, ringing, final. Sparks leap and scatter across the floor like fireflies gone mad. Again you strike, and again, turning the metal with the tongs, shaping it to your will. It resists, always, but with enough heat and pressure, it yields. That is the lesson. Nothing strong is made easily, but everything can be shaped. You work for nearly an hour, taking turns. When the fire begins to cool, you add more charcoal from the basket. Not wood. Not anymore. Charcoal burns hotter, cleaner, better for shaping the stubborn veins of the earth. It is made by slow burning wood under earth, a process you've helped with many times, covering stacked branches with turf and tending the smoldering pile for days. At last, the work is done. The tool you've made is small. A hook for hanging pots, but strong and smooth, quenched in the water bucket with a hiss and a cloud of steam. You hang it on the rack with the others, proud. Your cousin claps your shoulder once, then returns to his own work. He is making a blade for a seeks, a short fighting knife. You watch as he draws it out, stretching the glowing iron with careful, even blows. Outside, the sun has nearly vanished. The cold returns quickly once you step beyond the forge, biting again at your fingers and face. But you carry the warmth within you now, in your chest, in your arms, in the quiet satisfaction of things done well. You pass the fields once more on your way back. The sky is streaked with violet and copper. Smoke curls from your home. You pause for a moment, watching the light flicker in the windows. Inside, the evening meal is being prepared. There will be fish tonight, dried from the summer's catch, soaked and stewed with onions and herbs. And there will be stories and laughter and perhaps a song or two. You walk slowly, your boots crunching frost, your breath easy in the still air. Today you've worked the land and shaped the earth. You've walked the boundary between what grows from the soil and what is drawn from fire and ore. You've helped mend fences and bent iron. You've built the world around you, one handspan at a time. And tomorrow, you will do it again. By now the afternoon has begun to fade, and the land lies quiet beneath a sky the color of polished pewter. The wind carries the salt of the distant fjord, faint but unmistakable. You've learned to read that scent, just as your people have for generations. It means tides have turned, ships have moved, and maybe, just maybe, news has arrived from the wide, wandering world beyond the headlands. Your village lies not far from the sea, where a natural inlet carves deep into the rocky coast. It is there where the cold water laps against stones smoothed by centuries of passage that the longships come. Not always great warships bristling with carved beasts, no. More often merchant boats, sleek and broad, made for cargo and coast hugging. Trade is as vital as raiding, though it doesn't fill the songs quite the same. You follow the path down toward the shore, boots crunching through salt-sprayed heather. The sea appears slowly, first as a glint between trees, then a wide grey mirror, barely rippling in the cold hush of winter. You're not alone. Others are heading the same way. Not in great numbers, just a trickle of folk like you, curious, hopeful, wrapped in cloaks and shawls against the breeze. At the jetty, a structure of planks and stone, lashed with rope and tar. 2 boats are tied off. One is familiar, the other not. Both ride low in the water, which means they came heavy with goods. You quicken your step. The trader is here. You know him by sight. A wiry man with braided hair and a silver arm-ring, his cloak clasped with a brooch shaped like a bear's head. He doesn't live here, but he comes often, and his eyes always scan the crowd for familiar faces. You nod to him, and he returns it with a flick of his chin. That's all, but it's enough. You're part of this too. On the shore, goods are being unloaded. Barrels of dried fish, bundles of linen, sacks of grain. There are tools wrapped in oilcloth, knives tucked into leather, iron nails in wooden boxes. Small things, practical things. But there are wonders too, glimmers of far places. Beads of colored glass from the south, amber from the Baltic, a comb carved from walrus ivory. A bit of silk, no bigger than a hand, but shimmering like water. It is whispered that it came from Miklagard, the city the Greeks call Constantinople. You doubt the tale, but you want to believe it. You help unload, your hands steady on the thick ropes. There is a rhythm here too, one passed down through years of dockside work. You lift, carry, stack, always careful. A single drop jar could mean a winter's lost trade. The trader speaks little, but his apprentice counts every item twice. Nothing goes unrecorded. When the unloading is done, the exchange begins. No coins. Not here, not often. Instead, barter rules. You watch your father step forward, bearing 2 finely spun wool cloaks. Your mother made them, weaving for weeks beside the fire. He trades them for a small iron cauldron and a bag of salt. Others bring carved bowls, smoked meat, bundles of fur, all hoping for something they can't make themselves. You don't trade today, but you watch closely. This is how you learn what things are worth, which goods are prized, how to judge a blade's balance or a needle's strength. The trader shows off a small chest of Frankish knives, their hilts inlaid with brass. He says they're from the Rhineland, but your uncle thinks otherwise and snorts. South, yes, but not that far south. You tuck that away in your mind. Traders exaggerate, always. A woman you know barters for a string of glass beads, offering 2 lengths of dyed wool and a small sack of dried berries. The trader hesitates, then nods. The beads are blue and red and green, bright as the northern lights. They're not just for beauty. Beads speak of status. They say your family can afford the world, even a little piece of it. By the time the last deal is struck, the sun is dipping low behind the hills, casting the sea in bands of copper and grey. The boats are lighter now, their hulls rising higher in the water. They'll leave tomorrow with new goods and new stories, bound for some other village along the coast, or perhaps farther, to the isles to the west, or the rivers that lead into the heart of the continent. The tide has turned. You can hear it, feel it in the air. The sea is never still for long. As you walk home, your thoughts drift outward. You think of the stories the trader might tell if he had the time, of cities where towers gleam in the sun, where coins clink in stone halls, where spices color the air with unfamiliar scents. You imagine walking those streets, seeing those sights. It stirs something in your chest. Not longing, exactly, but possibility. You've never left your homeland, not yet, but many do. Some return, some do not. Your people are seafarers not only by necessity, but by nature. You know the timbers of a longship like the bones of your own hand. You've watched them shaped, soaked, and set. You've seen how the sail is rigged, how the rudder curves, how the oars are notched and pegged. One day you'll crew such a vessel yourself. You might sail to Hedeby or Dublin, or farther still. But tonight you return home. The wind is rising, and already the traders' crew are lashing their boats against the dock more tightly. Storms come fast here, slipping from the sea like wolves from the trees. Back in the longhouse, the warmth welcomes you. The fire glows brighter than before, and the smells of stew and hearth smoke fill the air. Someone plays a lyre, softly, just a few notes. The trader sits near the doorway, drying his boots by the fire. You hear your father ask him about the market at Kopang, and whether the new king there still demands taxes in silver. The trader just laughs. He always demands, he says, but silver's as rare as a warm day in winter. You sit and listen, your hands wrapped around a carved cup of warm mead. Outside, the sea darkens. But inside, stories flow as freely as wind through sails. Today, the world came to your shore, and tomorrow it might carry you to its farthest edge. Darkness comes slowly in winter, like a thick wool cloak drawn over your shoulders. By the time you step outside again, the sky is a vault of deep indigo, the stars pin-pricked like frost in a black sky. The northern air carries a stillness that is neither silence nor peace, but something more ancient, something that listens. Tonight is no ordinary evening. It is the third night after the new moon, the time marked in your family's reckoning for a quiet rite. Not a feast, not a sacrifice of great animals or elaborate chants. Those belong to the larger festivals, to the gatherings at midsummer or midwinter, when people journey from many farms to raise great offerings at the ancient groves. Tonight is simpler, Older. Tonight is the fire offering, small but sincere. You stand with your father just outside the longhouse, near a ring of stones half buried in snow. In the center lies a bundle of dried pine twigs, birch bark and a sprig of juniper. It is you who lights the fire this time. The flint clicks softly in your hands, and with a practiced motion, sparks fly into the bark. The flame begins small, barely a flicker, but it catches, grows, and curls upward in orange tongues. The family gathers close, but no one speaks yet. Your father begins first. He names the gods in a low voice: Odin the wise, Thor the strong, Freyr the giver. He speaks them not as distant, perfect beings, but as companions and guides, as kin who watch from the high seat of Asgard, from the branches of Yggdrasil. Each name is shaped with respect, and behind each name is a tale: how Odin hung for 9 days on the tree to learn the runes, how Thor crosses Bifrost with Mjolnir at his side, how Freyr brings the warmth that stirs the earth. Then come the smaller names: household spirits, ancestors, wights of the land. These don't dwell in the sky or the halls of the gods. They linger here, around your home, in the trees and stones, the doorframe, the threshold, the very hearth. You've learned not to step across the threshold too carelessly. You knock on wood not just for luck, but because something listens. Each member of your family makes an offering: a small carved charm, a bit of bread, a shaving of tallow. Yours is simple: a sliver of dried apple from last year's harvest. You place it into the fire. It smokes briefly, curling sweet and sharp, then vanishes. The warmth against your face is more than just heat. It is recognition. No priest oversees this. There are no scrolls or sacred books. Faith here lives in memory, in story, in the quiet respect passed from parent to child. The gods walk your world not in temples, but in the strength of your arm, the justice of your word, the rhythm of your seasons. Inside the longhouse, the fire on the central hearth burns brighter now, stoked by fresh wood. Shadows flicker along the beams overhead. The smell of resin and peat clings to your tunic. You gather again on the benches, fur-lined and familiar, wrapped in cloaks. This is when the stories begin in earnest. Not the brief tales exchanged by the forge or the dock, but the great stories, the ones that stretch far back into mist and myth. Your grandfather is the skald tonight, as he often is. His voice is rough from age, but steady as stone. He begins not with a hero, but with a riddle. What beast walks with iron in its mouth, drinks the sun, and leaves no prince behind? The younger children guess. Wrong, of course, but delighted. Eventually, he tells them, a ship, a long ship with its iron nails and dragon prow, swallowing daylight as it rides the tide. They laugh, and he laughs too, his eyes catching the firelight. Then he turns to deeper tales of Sigurd and the dragon, of Loki's tricks and Baldur's doom. But he does not finish the stories, not fully. That's the way of it. Some endings are left open, like nets set at sea. You must return to them later, draw them in with patience, with age. Some things are not told until you're ready to carry them. You listen not just with your ears, but with your whole being. These stories hold more than entertainment. They are how you remember what matters. Bravery, cunning, honor, boundaries. There is wisdom tucked between each stanza, between each laugh and pause. Your grandmother stirs the coals and adds a final log to the hearth. She is quieter, but her faith runs deep. She keeps the house charms polished, turns the runes each week, and tends to the small carved figure of Thor by the doorframe, his hammer raised to ward off harm. She tells you once, in a hushed voice, that she speaks to her mother still, when she churns butter, when she weaves, not aloud, not in madness, but in thanks. Not all people here follow the same way. Some speak now of a new god, a white Christ from the south, brought by kings and merchants and foreign monks. You've seen his mark, a simple cross scratched on the prow of a boat once and hanging from a trader's neck. There are whispers of kings who favor him, who tear down the old places of sacrifice. But not here, not tonight. Tonight you sit before the fire with the smell of pine smoke in your hair and the quiet breath of your family around you. You feel the pull of the gods, not as rulers on thrones, but as presence. They are in the strength of your axe, the luck of your harvest, the gleam of light on water. They do not demand, they endure. You fall asleep slowly, stretched out beneath furs beside the hearth, the embers glowing like stars caught in a stone circle. Somewhere in your dreams, you see the ash tree rise through the worlds, its roots winding through frost and flame, its branches holding gods, birds, men, and monsters alike. And high above, on the gallows tree, a one-eyed god leans close, whispering runes into the ear of the world. You awaken early the next morning, before the sun, when the longhouse is still full of the slow, steady breathing of sleep. The fire on the hearth is only ash and ember, but the cold in your bones stirs you to move. Today is a day of decision, not for war or harvest, but for speech, for judgment, for law. The thing is being held. In your time and place, law lives not in parchment or palace, but in people, in memory, in voice. The thing is the gathering of free folk, a meeting of families and clans to settle disputes, declare agreements, and keep the peace of the land. There is no king here, only chieftains and councils. Power belongs to the assembly, to those who speak and remember. You dress quickly, thick wool tunic, fur cloak, leather boots hardened from use. You break your fast with a piece of rye bread and a strip of dried mutton. The food is plain, but hearty enough for the road ahead. The thing will be held on the flat land near the ancient stone, a half-day's walk from your homestead. You travel with your father and uncle and several other men from the neighboring farms. Along the way, the talk is light but laced with purpose. There is a matter to be settled this time, a quarrel over a boundary stone that may have been moved in the thaw last spring. No swords will be drawn, not yet, but words can cut too, and everyone knows the lines between justice and blood must be watched closely. The path winds through birch and pine, the branches dusted with frost. As you descend into the wide glen where the thing is held, you see others arriving too, men and women, young and old, all bundled against the cold, their faces somber but expectant. There are no banners, no fanfare, just a sense of order passed down through generations. At the center stands the thingstead, a raised circle of stones where the law speaker will stand. Behind it, the old stone, waist-high and covered in moss, leans at an angle that no one dares correct. It is said to mark where a chief once died defending the right of a farmer to speak. Truth or tale, the stone reminds you, law is older than any one man. The law speaker arrives last. He is not a priest, nor a ruler, but he is one of the most respected men in the district. He holds no weapon, only a carved staff and a memory full of names, deeds, and oaths. You've heard he can recite 100 years of judgments without pause. Today, his voice will be the spine of the gathering. He steps onto the stone circle and lifts the staff. Silence falls. He begins not with the present quarrels, but with the recitation of law itself, the shared truths of your people, spoken aloud, so none may forget. These are not rules to control, but agreements to live by: the rights of inheritance, the duties of kinship, the fines for theft, the bounds of vengeance. He speaks of werigild, the man price owed for killing, and how its payment prevents a feud. He speaks of outlawry, the sentence given when someone breaks the peace so deeply that they are cast from protection. No one may help an outlaw. They become as a ghost among the living. The speaker's voice is steady, like the tide. You listen closely, learning the words even if you don't yet bear the weight of their meaning. One day you might stand here to defend your own name or your kin's. Then come the disputes. Each case is heard in turn, brought forward by witnesses and judged by consensus, often with the law speaker guiding the process. First is a claim of stolen livestock, settled quickly when a neighbor admits he borrowed the ewe during the storm and meant to return it. Laughter breaks the tension. Not every matter is grave. But then comes the boundary case, the one you'd heard whispered about. Two men approach the circle. One is old, his hand resting on a carved walking stick. The other is younger, broader, his mouth set in a firm line. They argue about where a stone once stood and what line it marked, between pasture or hayfield, between peace or encroachment. They speak with force, but not with fury. The law speaker listens, asks for witnesses. 3 men step forward to speak. One recalls the placement from his boyhood. Another says it shifted after the great flood 5 winters past. The third simply says he does not know. After a pause, the assembly decides the stone shall remain where it is now, but a payment of silver will pass between the families, not as punishment, but to ease the bitterness. Both men nod, reluctantly, but without rage. That is the way of it. You are struck again by the power of this gathering. No warbands, no throne, just voices, memories, and the will to keep peace through honor. But not all things are settled easily. Near the end of the day, a matter of deeper weight arises, a man accused of murder. The mood shifts. Everyone draws close. There is no blood feud yet, but the family of the slain is present. You watch them. Faces hollow, eyes narrowed. The accused stands with his brother. He claims it was in self-defense. Witnesses speak. Tension climbs like a storm wind. After a long and heavy silence, the law speaker steps forward and names the fine. 80 head of silver, the full werigild owed for a free man. If payment is not made before the next moon, the killer will be outlawed. There are murmurs. The price is high, but it is justice, and it will hold. For now. As the sun begins to set, the crowd disperses. No feast follows, not today. The thing is sacred, but not always celebratory. Still, there is relief in it, in the knowledge that words have shaped the day, that your people can hold the threads of their world together not by iron alone, but by memory and meaning. On the way home, your father speaks little, but when he does, he says, "You must always listen at the thing, even when the law does not concern you. One day it will." You nod, you understand. Law, here, is not a weapon. It is a wall. It holds the winter out. It binds the kin together. It gives you a place to stand when the storms come. And tonight, as you settle once more beside the hearth, you feel the quiet weight of those words. They are not carved in stone, but they live in you now, just the same. The sword does not gleam every day. Most days are filled with soil and salt, with wood smoke and wool, with birth and baking and boundary stones. But you are still your ancestors' child, and they were not always farmers. Their names are carved into memory not just for what they grew, but for what they defended, and for how they fought. You are taught from youth that honor matters more than gold, and that to defend, it may cost your life. But it is not bloodlust that sharpens a blade, it is duty. War is not the first answer, but it is never forgotten as a possibility. It lives like a storm just past the horizon, sometimes gathering quietly, sometimes breaking without warning. Today is one of those days where its shadow is felt. Word has come from the coast. A neighboring village has been raided. The attackers were not foreign, but local. A clan known for grudges, their ships painted black. They came at dawn, quick and precise, burned 2 halls and took cattle. No one died, but 1 man was wounded and 3 women taken. This is no simple theft. This is Nyanga, a shameful act, low and vile. The assembly will hear of it, of course, but first comes the question of response. Your chieftain sends word across the district. Arms must be prepared. The longhouse grows tense. The usual rhythm shifts. Blacksmiths work late into the night. Old shields are patched, swords unwrapped from the oiled skins where they were hidden. Your father brings down the axe that has not seen the light in 5 winters. It is not grand. No silver inlay or ornate hilt, but it has weight and history. You are old enough now to join the warband. There is no ceremony, just a nod and the handing over of a short spear. You feel the gravity of it. This is not play. Before departure, there is a quiet rite. Not a feast, not celebration, but a moment of calling. The warriors gather near the woods where the old ash tree stands. Some tie offerings to its branches, twists of wool, bits of iron. A quiet prayer is spoken to Tur, god of law and war, the one-handed god who gave up strength for trust. The message is clear: fight with purpose, not vengeance. Then the oaths. Every man swears to hold the line, to not break formation, to not leave another behind. These are spoken aloud, and memory will not let them fade. A man who breaks his oath is not just punished, he is forgotten. That is the greater death. You march at dawn. The path is long, winding through frost-laced trees and across marshy lowlands. You travel in silence. The only sounds the creak of leather and the crunch of boots on frozen earth. When you arrive at the burned village, you see what was taken and what was left: scorched beams, trampled earth, ashes of livestock pens. A woman weeps beside a collapsed barn, her palm clutched to her mouth. Her sister was taken. The chieftain speaks with the elders. There will be no full-scale war yet, but there will be an answer. A message, a raid in return. And so, at dusk you set out by boat. The fjord is still as a mirror, the only ripples from your longship's oars. You wear no bright colors, only dark cloaks, faces smeared with ash to dim the pale glow of skin. This is not for glory. This is for balance. The target is a remote storehouse belonging to the offending clan, a symbol, not a slaughter. You strike hard and fast, as the old sagas teach. 2 guards are overcome with clubs and tied. The storehouse is emptied, grain and smoked fish taken, and its doors shattered. A fire is lit, controlled but deliberate. Enough to be seen, not enough to kill. When you return, you are not cheered. The people nod grimly. The message has been sent. We are not prey. We remember. And so the balance holds for now. But there are other wars too, ones that stretch far beyond your shores. Each year, when spring thaws the rivers and loosens the sea ice, men from your village join the longer voyages. Some sail west to the Saxon coasts, where silver and land can be taken. Others journey east, along the great rivers of the Rus, trading furs and iron for silks, honey, and coins stamped with foreign kings' faces. Still others speak of Miklagara, Constantinople, where men in your tongues serve as elite guards to the emperor himself. You dream of these places, perhaps, but you also hear the stories of those who never returned. Not all wars are raids. Some are defenses against encroaching kings, rival clans, even the sea herself when she turns wild. When war does come in earnest, the shield wall is formed. You have trained for it in the yard behind your hall, shoulder to shoulder, round shields locked, spears bristling outward like a porcupine of ash, wood, and iron. It is not chaos, but discipline. You do not shout. You do not rush. You hold. Behind the wall stands reputation. Every blow you strike or withstand adds to it. Not just among your kin, but across the region. Songs are made of such things, and in a world without written records, your story is your name. A man who flees the line is mocked in verse. A man who dies with honor is sung in the hearth circle long after the embers die. And yet, no one truly seeks death. You are taught to survive, to fight wisely, to withdraw if needed, but also to know when to stand firm. This balance between valor and wisdom is the true test of worth. There is another way a warrior earns a name, through homegang, the ritual duel. Sometimes, disputes too bitter for law are settled by single combat. Each fighter brings a second and fights under set rules, on an ox hide spread on the ground, or marked lines in the grass. First blood may end it, or death, depending on the severity. Honor is restored in the doing, win or lose. You have seen one such duel. Two men, once brothers by oath, now bound to fight over the breaking of a marriage vow. The clash was brutal but swift. One fell, his ribs broken. The other helped him up. They left in silence, but the feud ended there. In all this, raids, duels, defenses, tales, what truly matters is drengskapa, the quality of being a true man, brave but just, bold but bound by duty. To live with drengskapa is to live with honor that survives the sword. As the day ends and you sit once more by the hearth with your gear set beside you, you feel the lingering weight of war, not in your arms, but in your memory. What matters is not the steel itself, but how it is wielded. Not every scar is on the skin. Some are in the silence after battle, in the names remembered or lost. And if you are lucky, one day your deeds will be told not by your mouth, but by another's over firelight, beneath the stars. Then you will know that you lived well in the eyes of your kin. The wind has turned. You notice it first in the trees, the way the birches no longer rustle but hiss, their leaves brittle at the edges. The light shifts, pale and low even at midday. Smoke clings heavier in the air, and when you breathe in, you smell more pine tar, more peat, more wood. It is the season of closing in. Winter is coming. This truth lives deeper than words in you. It lives in how the animals grow thick with fur, how the livestock are moved closer to the hall, how the larders are packed and the smoked meats tested. It lives in how the women double their weaving, how the men check the roofs for leaks, and how the older folk start to watch the sky a little longer before sleep. You feel it in your bones, too. Not just the cold, but the weight of time. Because winter isn't only about snow and ice. It is the part of the year when the world pulls inward, and you do the same. You think more. You remember more. You speak less loudly. The year's work is mostly done. Crops have been brought in, fish dried, repairs made. There is a brief stillness now between the frantic pace of autumn and the silence of deep frost. In this pause, you begin to sense your place in the great circle of things. You help your grandfather with the tools. He does not speak quickly, But when he does, you listen. He shows you how to oil the iron axe he heads, how to keep the whetstone dry and warm so it won't crack. He tells you of winters when the snow was higher than the fences, and they had to dig tunnels from the door to the smokehouse. You ask how they endured. He shrugs. You keep each other warm, he says, and you keep the stories warmer still, because in winter, stories become bread. At night, after supper, the hearth becomes the center of the world. You all sit in a loose circle, children curled near the flames, women spinning wool by hand, older men puffing quiet pipes. One voice will rise, low and even, and begin a tale. Not always of gods or giants. Sometimes just of a cousin who crossed the sea and never came back, or of the bear that broke into the mead store 2 winters ago. But always, the stories carry the weight of memory. You begin to understand. This is how people live forever. Not through gold, not through fame. Through memory, spoken aloud, passed from tongue to ear like an heirloom. Your grandfather tells you that no man is truly dead until his name is spoken for the last time. You think of that sometimes when you walk past the burial mounds. There are several near your village. Low rises in the earth, grass covered and still. Some are marked with stones, others with carved poles. You don't step on them, not out of fear, but respect. These are not just graves. These are homes for the dead, resting places where there are several near your village. Low rises in the earth, grass covered and still. Some are marked with stones, others with carved poles. You don't step on them, not out of fear, but respect. These are not just graves. These are homes for the dead, resting places where the ancestors wait and listen. You've heard of ship burials, where the honored are laid to rest in their boats, surrounded by weapons, tools, sometimes even horses or servants. But most in your village are buried simpler, with a blade perhaps, or a comb or a carved pendant. Objects that mattered, that held part of who they were. Because even in death, identity endures. In your world, the line between the living and the dead is not hard and final. It is soft, like the edge of dusk. The spirits of your forebears are not gone. They are part of the soil, the stone, the smoke in the rafters. On certain nights, like Alpha Blot or Disablot, offerings are left out. Bits of bread, bowls of beer, carved tokens. Not to bribe, but to honor. You are not afraid. You know they are with you. One evening, as winter begins to fully grip the land, your mother takes you aside. She places a bundle in your hand, a woven pouch, simple, but made with care. Inside is a pendant, a small iron Thor's hammer, carved smooth from wear. It was your uncle's, she says. Now it's yours. You feel its weight, not just the iron, but the years behind it. You never met your uncle. He died in a storm many winters ago. But you know his stories, and now you carry him, quite literally, close to your heart. This is legacy. It is not about what you own or even what you do, but what you leave behind in others, in memory, in custom, in the tilt of your head, or the way you tie your cloak. Sometimes legacy is a child. Sometimes it is a story. Sometimes it is a patch of land you kept safe through winter. The cold deepens. Snow comes in waves, then stays. The fjord freezes at the edges. Birds vanish. The livestock are fed by hand, hay carried in great baskets across the icy yard. The smoke holes are closed tighter. Everything huddles close. Yet even now, there is joy. Children play on the snow-crusted rooftops. You carve runes into firewood just for fun. A neighbor's new baby is born healthy, his cry strong even in the cold. Someone brews a batch of pine needle mead, and laughter returns to the longhouse. You begin to realize the people here do not survive winter in spite of it, but through it. It is the season of stillness, yes, but also of clarity. You see who matters, what matters. You learn patience. You learn silence. And when the fire burns low, you learn how to sit with yourself. One night, your grandfather does not wake. He goes quietly, curled beneath furs, a faint smile still on his lips. There is no wailing, no panic. The family gathers in peace. He lived long, worked well, loved deeply. His body is washed and wrapped. His favorite blade is placed beside him. In the spring, the mound will be raised. But tonight, stories are told. Not just of battles or adventures, but of how he laughed when he lost at dice, or the time he climbed the roof to chase off a raven. You find yourself smiling. You will tell these stories too. And your children will, one day. This is how the North remembers. Not in stone, but in voice. Not in wealth, but in the warmth of a name still spoken. Even in winter, the heart of your people burns bright. And as you lie down that night, wrapped in fur beside the hearth, the snow thick outside, and the fire low, you feel something deeper than sleep coming on. You feel that you belong,